There will be no more talk about the ages of goats or the numbers of goats. You will contain the goats.
Welcome back to This American Goat. We're continuing our interviews with the three Billy Goats Gruff. Today, the second Billy Goat Gruff will tell us about the loneliness of being a middle child, and also about his coat care routine. You won't want to miss that, listeners. I only wish my coat were so luxurious. Oh, what's that? What? Oh, my goodness, how embarrassing. My producer has just informed me that I forgot which podcast I'm on. I might have eaten too many wild oats this morning. Well, welcome back to the Goat American Novel, the all-ages Barnyard Gothic podcast by Hildy Festerling. I'm Myra Grass, field reporter, filling in for your regular co-hosts, Ursula and Aaron, who said something about following up on a story about a Wild Mountain Billy, or was it a Billie Eilish concert? I wasn't really listening. In their absence, let's get down to business. Welcome to episode 4, You Will Contain the Goats. But will anyone contain them? I have my doubts. I'm sure you'll remember, listeners, that the last time we visited the upper story of the barn with Goatina, Silver, and Minerva, they'd had a battle with the tiger, and Silver was injured. We'll be checking in on them in the latter part of the episode, but first, missions. Everyone seems to be on a mission in this episode. The nanny goats embark on their dual missions of finding the missing kids and eating all of Millicent's roses. Well, Millicent, I beg your pardon, but we never promised not to eat your rose garden. Sawyer embarks on a search party for the missing herd. Zipnog embarks on a quest to operate a chocolate manufacturing plant. All of these quests have negative consequences, and I won't try to pull the Angora over your eyes. The nanny goats don't find their kids. They do find a barrel of cherry brandy. And what do they do with it? Well, they drink it. Parents, I'll be honest, against our better judgment, there is some drunk goat humor in this episode. Things get a little out of hoof, but no one tries to drive the tractor under the influence. Well, we've got to take the thorns with the roses, especially as the thorns are so delicious. Please enjoy.
Zipnog had had the day to search FM's cabin in peace, but she was coming up with increasingly small amounts of the brown. She had finished off the last of the brown chips. She'd found a tiny morsel of the brown tucked under FM's pillow. She had spent some moments contemplating a hunk of brown wrapped in colorful foil and shaped to resemble a rabbit, which Zipnog found very insulting.
A rabbit could never understand the brown. Rabbits have no gumption, no grit, and they would never dare brave the dangers of breaking into a human fortress of brown. They can't climb fences, they can't outwit dogs, their paws are useless on latches, and anyway, all they eat is clover. I, Zipnog, should be the one honored by the brown in my own image.
Nevertheless, Zipnog ate the brown rabbit, then climbed into the Tiffany lamp, thinking,
I should be full enough of the stuff by now.
And she tried to get the lamp rocking, and she cried out,
I, Zipnog, have merged again with the wellspring of my power. The brown fills me again. Watch in awe, you mortals, as I make the lights flicker and the noises noise.
Then she closed her eyes and focused all her energy on the light bulbs in the Tiffany lamp, which had crackled so spectacularly the night before.
Yes,
she whispered.
I can feel the power moving through me.
She squeezed her eyes shut and clenched her claws and concentrated so hard that the aroma of brown filled the Tiffany lamp. Zipnog opened her eyes and looked around defiantly.
Even my toots have the power of the brown,
she crowed, peering over the edge of the lamp. No one was listening.
I wonder when that stupid dog will come back,
she muttered to herself. She looked at the light bulbs.
Why didn't you flicker? She asked them. Is it because I haven't eaten enough brown? Because I can't find much because, and well, to tell you the truth,
Zipnog's nose quivered.
I'm wondering if I really am the true mistress of the brown. I mean, if I can't find any more in here, how am I supposed to get more? I mean, how do humans even find all the stuff they have? I mean, what about you, Lightbulb? How did humans find you? Is there a tree where light bulbs grow?
The Lightbulb said nothing.
Maybe humans don't find things. Maybe humans make things. Well, sure, just like I make a nest. I've seen that farmer make a lot of things, terrible things. Gates and fences. Maybe you didn't come on, Lightbulb, because I won't be the real mistress of the brown until I learn how to make the brown.
Zipnog shuddered all down the length of herself, flicked her tail once, twice, shook out her cheek pouches and flew mightily out of the Tiffany lamp and onto the pantry shelves. Then she closed her eyes and inhaled.
Brown in my blood, brown in my nose. Guide me. Guide me.
With perhaps the greatest mental effort of focus ever used by a squirrel, she inhaled once more, blocking out the various after aromas of brown which still clung to the plastic wrappers of the little brown rabbit, the brown chips, the smooth brown goo jar, as she was looking for something.
The raw materials.
Something she knew she'd got just a hint of before.
Yes.
There it was, a whiff of something sharp, dark, dusty and unfriendly, but in its way, the brownest smell of them all. She ran to the scent. The smell's epicenter was a brown cardboard canister. In 2 seconds flat, she had chewed through it, and in half a second more, her mouth was filled with a horribly bitter, horribly dry powder. Zipnog's mouth hung open, her tongue coated with the powder.
This is it. This is the...
She waggled her head and spat.
This is the special dirt. This special dirt is the true source of the brown, and I must fix it up with something sweet. Yes.
Then she flew out of the window, knocking 2 of the last 4 porcelain goats off on her way. The nanny goats' search party was underway. Mama Chi-Chi and Lady Baba had finally made their way out of FM's goat enclosure. In the end, for the 2 biggest and strongest of the nannies, it had been a simple matter of butting a fence post until it fell over. From there, they trotted to Millicent's white picket garden fence, which was really only decorative as far as goats were concerned. They just hopped right over it. Holy mountain goat, Lady Baba said once they were in Millicent's garden. Roses. Lady Ba, we are here to find our kids. Yes, I know, but roses. I only get them once a year when FM prunes hers, and that's moons away. The tart leaves, the delicate perfumed petals, the sweet spicy thorns. Look, Mama Chi, look at those thorns right there. Tell me your mouth isn't watering. I do love a mouthful of thorns, Mama Chi admitted, then cracked heads with her deputy. After we've looked in every single window. Mama Chi and Lady Baba had never really looked in windows before. Sure, long ago when they'd been kids, able to escape any fence with a graceful leap, they'd peered into FM's cabin a few times to see if the grain was kept there. But Millicent's house was a whole other thing, a sprawling affair with more than a dozen windows, many of them well out of their reach. Sneaking up to Millicent's kitchen window, they narrowly avoided being seen by Sawyer on his way out, muttering darkly to the slops bucket. The 2 goat matriarchs watched him go from their hiding place in the rose bushes, then stepped out and made their way to Millicent's kitchen window. Will you look, Lady Ba? Your spine is more flexible than mine. And so Lady Baba hooked her hooves up onto the first ground floor window and looked within. Millicent sat atop a ladder reading a book, presumably from the shelf full of books and cookware which ran all around the top of her kitchen. She chuckled to herself, then stared into the distance and murmured,
Lemon curd.
Then went back to her reading. What's lemon curd? Lady Baba whispered down to her leader. Who cares? Did you see any goats in there? Next window. Wait a minute. The little scamp is coming in. Mateo said he saw Mangoat and Dandy with him, didn't he? In the kitchen, the child looked up at his mother on top of the ladder. The goats cocked their ears.
Well,
Arcturus began.
well, Mom, are you making any raw vegetables for dinner?
Millicent peered down.
The family meal was eggplant croquant.
Okay. Well, Mom, I need some more cereal.
Cereal? More cereal. Let me ask you something, young man. Where do you think cereal comes from?
Oh boy, Mama Chi-Chi said, listening in. As mother of 22, I recognize the start of a very long lecture when I hear one. Next window. The next several windows looked in on rooms which were all variations on the same graceful jumble of books, gardening tools, floral wire, and floral ribbons. Useless. What about? They popped up and saw into the little girl's room. Layla was packing the wedding veils and bow ties and top hats back into their box and sighing reflectively into the block of wood. Weirdest afternoon of my life, Mama Chi-Chi muttered, dropping down and moving to the next window. What in the barn is that? Lady Baba asked, staring suspiciously into a very small room which seemed entirely organized around a gleaming white, cold-looking object which appeared to be filled with water. Is that a human stock waterer? Is that how humans drink? At precisely that moment, the little scamp walked into the room, stepped up to the watering trough, dropped his pants down to his ankles, and Lady Baba let out a bleat of shock before Mama Chi-Chi knocked her to the ground. They stood panting in the bushes. Humans, Mama Chi-Chi bleated in a strangled voice. Mama Chi-Chi, please let me eat these rose bushes. I'm traumatized by what I've just seen. There's only one more window that we can reach. Then, roses. Mama Chi-Chi hopped herself up to the last window. It was a room swarming with hatchets, ropes, saws, and in the middle, what appeared to be a giant glob of some kind of bedding. She dropped down. No kids. Well, maybe some of the other nannies are having better luck. I wonder if Mateo really did see them with that little human or not. He could have just been making up excuses to me. Oh well, now that we're here, we'd better eat all these roses. It would be a crime against goat kind to not. The pigs had spent the next day discussing the finer points of all that Sawyer had told them that morning. The bombshell revelation that FM would one day eat them was considered too painful to dwell on. Concepts such as therapy, consensus building, and the proper way to conduct a revolution were a bit cloudy to the pigs given their limited experience in the world, but they were nonetheless very intrigued.
He did say not to send the horse to the glue factory. That point was quite clear. I think we can agree to follow that precept.
One of the pigs kept saying through the day. Although FM didn't own any horses, they didn't know any horses. Another pig kept pointing out. The conversation went round and round in a predictable circle.
He said we really ought to take over that house. He said there would be comfortable beds. But do we even want beds? We just don't know. How could they be better than mud? Perhaps we could fill the beds with mud. But why should we do what he suggests? Isn't he just another form of, what did he call it? The oppressor. He isn't the oppressor, I don't think. He said we should throw open the granaries and let the goats loose. Well, that's a terrible idea. The goats are rude. They'd get the bloat if we did that, and they're perfectly capable of letting themselves out anyway. There goes some goats right now trotting over to the pumpkin patch. And they're not throwing our gates open, you'll notice. Okay, but he said that big house gets a donut delivery. He said probably. He said it probably gets a donut delivery. But how probably is that, really? And then he said, just watch me. Maybe one of these times I'll forget to close your gates. And that is the most human thing of all. Is he planning to forget? How do you plan to forget something? Honestly, I'm worried about that boy. Oppressor or no, he's a man on the edge. Anyone can see that. Yes, and he wants to drive us off the edge with him. He's late. I'm getting hungry. Maybe he fell off the edge with our donuts. I didn't mean a real edge. Real edge. Fake edge. You're starting to talk like a human. Just like those pigs in Russia. We're destined to become the oppressor. Look,
He's coming. Sawyer approached the pig enclosure without saying a word. He locked eyes with the big sow for several long moments, and then, saying nothing, he threw in buckets of doughnuts and turnips and milk, then headed off to the goats. In the goat barn, only Goatko Ono was still there, was still anywhere to be seen. She was laying alone in the straw in her white lace undergarments.
Where is everyone?
She replied, ageless and wise, but in a language Sawyer couldn't understand.
Why are you still wearing that?
He managed. Sawyer, pulling at his hair, ran outside and scoured the barnyard in the thinning afternoon light.
Where are they?
He howled, still running and poking in the shadows and crannies of the goat enclosure and the aspen grove. He circled back to the goat barn and threw open every stall door.
Just you are left?
He asked Goatko Ono, desperately wishing she could give him some answers. Sawyer's eyes narrowed.
Scott, I'll show him a restraining order,
He said.
We're going to settle this, once and for all.
He said, stomping out of the goat gate without bothering to close it. What was the point? He was a compass needle, a bullet, pointed straight at 3 stories of malignant solitude, dressed up in the best vinyl siding money could buy. Scott's house.
The house, from which I and my family are restrained.
Sawyer said, working himself up.
But tell me this, Scott, college roommate of so-called justice, how does a restrained man protect those for whom he is responsible? How does a restrained man defend the maligned honor of his little brother, of his Fruity Pebbles mother, of his own reputation as a responsible farm sitter? He must break.
And here Sawyer mimed the breaking of chains.
He must break his restraints. Indeed, he is morally obliged to do so. His family, his future, depend on it. And an entire herd of defenseless goats.
There he goes, talking to himself, said the pigs, who were still discussing what ought to be done about the open gate when Sawyer stormed past them. Look, he's coming. Who were still discussing what ought to be done when Sawyer stormed past them. Look, he's coming. Sawyer approached the pig enclosure. He was talking to himself, but one of the pigs grunted at him with a little question mark at the end of her grunt. He stopped and stared at them, eyes glazed, but with a desperate gleam.
Did I forget something? Is your water...
With a sort of angry absent-mindedness, he opened the gate and scanned the pig yard for problems.
No, everything looks fine here.
His gaze wandered back to the neighbor's house, immense even at a distance. He turned and locked eyes again with the sow. You could have heard a pin drop. Sawyer looked meaningfully at the pigs, then glared long and hard at the new neighbor's multi-story house. He reached to close the gate, but closed his fist instead, and rapped on the open latch with his knuckles.
Cluck it!
What in the wallow was that? Asked the big boar. Group therapy with the farmhand? No, said the big sow. That was an invitation to the Russian Revolution.
I'll bring Pearl,
he said to himself as he came up towards FM's cabin.
I forgot about her, with all the goings-on.
He pictured himself at Scott's door with Pearl at his side, he and the great white dog glowing with righteous anger.
You can't restrain right and wrong.
He'd say to Scott, and then Pearl would bare her teeth.
Pearl!
He called, upon arriving at the open door of the cabin. He stepped in. Something scurried near the bed, but it was nothing Pearl-sized, and whatever it was, it hid itself before he could get a good look at it. Pearl was not within, and the cabin was absolutely destroyed. Sawyer blinked, and his mouth fell open.
Signs of a struggle.
He whispered.
It all makes sense now. He'd come before, and he tried to take her, but she fought him off. That's why the cabin looked like this. And
And then in an anguished yell,
Ah! He's taken Pearl too! This man will not rest until he's stolen every animal on this farm!
Sawyer ran out into the evening air, which was at that moment rent by a scream of pure horror. Sawyer froze. He knew that scream.
Mother!
He called. He wheeled around and began running towards his mother's voice.
Mother! What has he done now?
He ran, breathless, jumping fences until he came within sight of his mother, standing in a pose of pure horror on her front porch, her eyes wild and her face in her hands.
Mother, what's he done now? Has he done anything to Layla? To Arcturus?
Millicent opened her mouth and shook her head, then stretched out a long finger toward her garden, her rose garden.
Your goats.
Came her strangled voice.
The goats! You saw them! What has he done to them?
Your goats have eaten all my roses.
When first they heard Millicent scream and were spotted putting away the last of the snow-white rose bush, Lady Baba and Mama Chi-Chi saw that it was time to make their exit. "Let's head for FM's cabin. Maybe Liz Oates and Button Midler have found them. There's a lot of good kale and pumpkins over there. Might have attracted the kids," replied Lady Baba, who had demolished the better part of 18 rare varieties of rose, nose to tail. Ate them to the quick. Ate those roses prized for their fragrance, as well as those grown for their fragile beauty and value as cut flowers. The two nannies made their way towards FM's cabin through a gathering gloom which matched their moods. They would never admit it, but both had sore bellies. This was not, of course, the real source of their upset. "Not a clue of them, Lady Ba," Mama Chi-Chi said, her voice low. She glurped her cud and shook her head against the rain, which was just starting to wet her face. "I can't imagine Mateo making it up about the little scamp, but I didn't see any sign of them. I haven't scented any coyotes or bears in the neighborhood. Where could they be?" "I don't know, Mama. It's true what you say about none of the regular predators, but this afternoon..." Lady Baba hesitated. During the... whatever that was with the lipstick and so on. "Yes. Then there was a wind. The first autumn wind. I smelled it, too." And Lady Baba glanced nervously at her leader. And with the scent of it, something in that wild wind, Mama Chi-Chi went on grimly. You could just only catch a snatch. You could almost pretend it wasn't there, because it was something so alien, so new. But undoubtedly a predator, Lady Baba finished. A big one. A coat grown sleek on meat. It came in from the east. We're heading towards it, Mama Chi-Chi said, pointing her nose in the direction they were headed. FM's cabin, the pumpkin patch, and the blackberry hedge and beyond. We're walking towards the chupacabra now, aren't we, Mama Chi? Well, it's raining now. We can't scent anything properly. Don't spook yourself, Lady Ba. Come on. Zipnog had made 8 trips to the shack where the boxes of pig food were kept. Twice a week, FM drove to grocery stores and picked up the squishy fruit, the over-the-hill milk, the day-old donuts. This shack was well known to squirrels, but although FM was scrupulous about keeping it sealed, Sawyer in his panic was getting sloppy, and squirrels checked its defenses constantly. After squeezing into the door and sampling several types of produce, they were out of donuts, Zipnog discovered the humble banana. The first one was already squashed open, having been stepped on 3 days ago at the grocery store, or she might never have made it through the bitter peel. She found it by stepping in it, literally, on her way to a heap of moldy peaches. She'd heard the squelching noise, felt the distasteful cold wet under her hind paws, but almost instantly she caught the mild, sweet scent of the overripe mash. She brought her paw to her mouth and licked. It was a very sweet, very mild flavor. It was smooth. It was mushy. Now, hours later, she stood on FM's bed, having done the hard work of ferrying 8 bananas, carrying each one in her teeth by its stem, from the shed up to FM's little kitchen table, then separating the sweet, mushy fruit from its sharp, bitter peel. The 8 bananas were lined up at her feet. She hadn't eaten any browns since the little offensive bunny, hours earlier, and her mind was sharp with effort and need.
Now I mash,
she said, and she threw herself into it.
Look!
Millicent howled.
Just look at this!
The Rose Garden. The economic and ideological heart of Millicent's work was undeniably devastated. Sawyer scratched his chin.
Did you actually see the goats do this?
How can you ask me that? Do you have any concept of how much work this garden represents? How much is lost? Dozens of rare and extremely valuable species, imported at great expense and difficulty. Years and years of expert tending on a 7-year pruning cycle. These plants will take years to recover, and many of them never will, to say nothing of the lost revenue.
But did you see the goats? I need to know. Did you see them?
But what else but goats could wreak this havoc? I'll sue FM. I'll sue you.
Mother, listen. I'm really sorry. It's really awful that your garden is ruined. But did you see the goats?
Of course I saw them. A whole beastly herd of them.
A whole herd? Oh, that's excellent. How many? And could you tell me what ages would you say were the goats you saw? Just adults or...
It was at this moment that Sawyer saw his mother, who lived her whole life at a high idle, become, for the first time, truly scary. Horror movie scary. It was dark, probably a trick of the light, but he seemed to see her eyes roll back into her head, only the whites showing. The veins in her neck stood out like ropes. Her fingers seemed to sprout retractile claws, which she now reached for her oldest child.
Listen to me, son,
she said, her voice dropping out of its usual tones down into some kind of grave growl.
There will be no more talk about the ages of goats or the numbers of goats. You will find the goats now. You will contain the goats now. All of them.
Sawyer gulped, nodded, and backed out into an evening which was showing promise of becoming a rainy night to find and contain the herd. Listener, I, your author, address you now, a farmer speaking to an unknown audience. Have you ever tried to contain goats? To herd them? Like herding cats, goes the popular saying, but the goat farmer laughs at this. Cats. Cats indeed. Imagine a creature with curiosity and independence of mind like a cat, but weighing some 90 pounds, featuring 4 shovel-sharp implements on each foot, as good for digging in and staying put as they are for climbing whatever tree or cliffside or outbuilding is at hand to escape your reach. They are by nature hard as nails, impervious to thorns and blows, impossible to push or pull, and where you might hope to find the docile nature of their cousin, the sheep or deer, there is instead all the stubbornness of a mule, condensed down into a small animal with a low center of gravity, a wicked hard skull, and a pair of sharp, turned-out, bone-hard horns. Good-tempered goats, such as FMs, never intend to gore or butt humans, but when someone is trying to push or pull them, which is, by the way, impossible, they throw their head around a lot, and that someone is going to get a polka-dot covering of bruises on their thighs, stomach, groin. And let's not forget, we're speaking of not one, but a whole herd, each goat with its own mind, tastes, strategies. The seasoned goat farmer knows that the only way to move goats anywhere is to get a bucket full of their favorite molasses oats, shake it loudly, and bleat to them. Hey, herd, no big deal. I just noticed there's some molasses oats over here, in your stall. But we, the human farmer, we have to learn this the hard way. This calm and carefree route of the seasoned herder is just not open to the rookie. Certainly not a rookie at his wits' end out in the gathering storm. The rookie senses at once the stubbornness of the goats, and his own stubbornness is fully activated. The novice goat herd, the farm sitter, he will not waste time getting the feed bucket. He will not leave these goats to despoil the garden one moment longer. He will not reward their bad behavior with treats. No, he will win the battle of wills with these animals. So he thinks. And so you can imagine Sawyer for the next several hours, yelling himself hoarse. Imagine Sawyer getting soaked to the bone and pierced and slapped by 1,000 apple branches, trying to get Liz Oates and Butt Midler out of the apple orchard. Imagine him working 3 goats into a maddening revolving door out of the oat shack where the pig food was stored, getting 1 goat out, shutting the door behind himself, trying to catch a 2nd goat in the darkened shack, only to have the first squeeze back in. The shack was open because a certain woodland creature had taken advantage of the latch being open, and so on, getting 1 goat back into the enclosure, only to watch her squeeze back out under yet another hole in the fence and trot off to another banquet in the rose garden. But all of that would be sometime in the 2 a.m. hour. Let us go back to when he was busy in Millicent's hayloft, trying to get the yearlings down the ladder. It was at that time that Mama Chi-Chi and Lady Baba were making their way to FM's cabin. Mama Chi-Chi and Lady Baba peered in the window. "Well, that's one heck of a mess in there," Lady Baba observed. "Yes, but not a kid's mess. The only things not knocked over are the houseplants." "Where's the dog? Doesn't the dog live in here?" "Oh, you don't suppose we left the dog in the root cellar, do you?" At that moment, a squirrel flew through the air, its irritating noise hole set to maximum scold. "Ugh, there's an infestation. Let's get out of here." They made their way around the back. "I can't smell anything in this rain," Lady Baba complained. "I know," Mama Chi-Chi answered, looking ruefully into the darkness beyond. "There's a pumpkin patch and some grapes beyond there, but I don't see or hear anyone eating them. Lady Baba, I'm beginning to lose hope." "Don't say it, Mama Chi-Chi. Don't say it." Mama Chi-Chi stood in the dark in the rain a moment, drops running down her proud face. "This chupacabra," she began in a whisper, but was interrupted by a loud
Did somebody say chupacabra?
came a somewhat familiar voice which did not sound quite familiar.
I'm gonna kill that chupacabra. I'm gonna kill that chupacabra.
"Liz Oates, where are you?"
She's in here. We're all in here,
came the voice of Butt Midler. Dimly, Mama Chi-Chi and her deputy perceived a small outbuilding a little ways away. They trotted over and put their nose in the door of the outbuilding. "Did you find any signs of the kids or of the goat darn chupacabra?" Butt Midler howled. "You found signs of it?" Mama Chi-Chi asked. "No," Liz Oates answered solemnly. "We found this." And she turned and walked deep into the shack, which smelled of sour milk and stale donuts, neither of which was appealing to goats. but also of something else, something which was appealing to goats. "What did you find?" Mama Chi-Chi asked, following Lizotes into the pitch darkness of the shed. And Lady Baba followed, so they were all inside the close little shack with its sharp aroma. "We didn't find the chupacabra," Bette Midler repeated. "We found this," Lizotes said again. Then, as Lady Baba and Mama Chi-Chi's eyes worked to adjust to the dim light of the shack, there was a splashing sound and the smell of something dark, sweet, sharp, and the sound of a long, slurping drink. "Do I smell cherries?" Mama Chi-Chi asked. "No, it's some kind of liquid," Lady Baba said, peering forward at the large barrel.
Liquid. Yes, it's a liquid, all right. Liquid cherries."
Bette Midler giggled, then plunged her nose into the barrel for a long, long drink. Then up again with a giggle.
"I liquid the liquid."
Lizotes bleated out her own giggle.
Did you hear that? She liquid the liquid.
"What's going on here? What's gotten into the two of you?" "Drink, Mama Chi-Chi," Bette Midler bleated. "Drink. Drink to drown the smell of an evil beast wafting in on the storm." "You smelled it too?" Mama Chi-Chi asked, her eyes beginning to adjust to the darkness to perceive Bette Midler and Lizzo standing in a barrel full of a frothing liquid that smelled like the wicked fairy stepmother of cherries. "We all smelled it," Bette Midler snapped back. "We all smelled the stinking chupacabra, and we went on eating grain in our lipstick. Now drink, Mama, drink." "Chupacabra? You can't find me in here," Lizotes muttered into the foaming barrel. Mama Chi-Chi, who hadn't been yelled at like that by anyone since she'd become herd queen, took a step toward the barrel with its sharp, beckoning aroma. "Yes," she agreed, then plunged her own nose in and took a long drink. "Yes, we all smelled it." She chewed a cherry that had rushed in with the drink. It was fizzy and strange, but not unpleasant. She put her nose back in the barrel. Up in the loft, in the aftermath of the fight with the tiger, the three little goats stood around in stunned silence. Well, Goatina and Minerva stood in stunned silence. Silver did not stand. Silver was on the ground. "Silver," Minerva began after some long silence, "can we do anything?" "I'm fine," Silver snapped.
"She ain't fine,"
Goatina whispered to Minerva. "I can hear you," Silver roared back. Roared, but weakly. Minerva nosed Goatina out of the door to stand in the hallway. "There's nothing we can do for her," Minerva said. "I can't believe we came here."
"Don't say that, Minerva. We know why we came here. We were called here. Ruby would have..."
"I'm sick of hearing about your old Ruby," Minerva snapped back. "I want to live. I want Silver to live. I don't want to get eaten. I have things to live for. How do we know Ruby called us, hey? Or if she did call us, how do we know she's on our side? Maybe it wasn't her calling us at all. Maybe it was that nasty monster. I shouldn't have filled your head with all those ghost stories." Goatina got a furious gleam in her eye, and she turned around. She stamped back into the room where Silver was laying, not far from Ruby's bones. Stepping over her injured cousin, Goatina nosed around in the dust on the floor until she found something. Something that clanked. Goatina began stamping on it, stamping it with her hoof. "What are you doing?" Minerva asked from the hallway. Goatina didn't answer. Clank, clank, clank went the something under Goatina's hoof. "What?" Minerva came in and stood facing Goatina, who was clanking at the something on the floor with all her might. "What are you doing?" Minerva bleated.
"I'm calling Ruby, and I'm calling you. Now this is the sign Ruby dropped on us while we were sleeping. It's a message from her, Minerva, and you're here so you can read it. So read it to me, Minerva. Read it to me."
"I can't."
"Try again."
Okay. Stop clanking. She peered down at the little metal sign. It says, Raji, Sally. Those aren't words. Try and make them sound like words. Oh, well, maybe the last one, the E does this thing. Anyway, maybe the last one says, not Sally, but sail. That sounds more like a word, right?
Good. And the first part?
Well,
Garage?
sail?
Good. Those sound more like words. Garage sale. What do they mean?
I don't know.
Ruby? Gotina called. Ruby, I know we're here to help you. I know we are. We're here to do the garage sale thing for you, Ruby. Okay? We're going to figure it out, and we're going to do it, Ruby, but we need your help. We need your help again, Ruby.
Minerva said, I don't think you should.
Minerva, don't you lose hope in Ruby. Ruby's protected us so many times. She gave me her bones, Minerva. She gave me her bones when I hit that monster in the eyeballs with it. Now you help me call Ruby. Ruby! Ruby? Ruby! We need your help so we can help you, Ruby.
Silver groaned and dropped her head to the ground. Both kids looked at her, then turned away.
Ruby, help us!
Minerva called suddenly.
Please help us. I have to get my sister back home safe.
There was a flicker of light in front of them. Blue light, so weak, but a flicker of a goat's face for just a moment. Calm and kind and wise, like only a great herd queen can be. Then the light flickered off.
She's weak, Minerva. She ain't strong as a ghost. She can only do so much.
Gotina went over to the goat's skeleton, rubbed her nose along Ruby's spine.
Take a little strength from me, Ruby. I know you can find a way. Take care of us and we'll take care of you.
Yeah, Ruby, Minerva said, coming over awkwardly and putting her nose to the skeleton. Maybe you know some... I can't believe I'm saying this. Believing my own crazy stories.
Maybe you know some other ghosts you could ask for help.
There was a flash of the blue light, and both goats felt a jolt of electricity in the room.
That did it, Minerva. That did it. She's going to get help from some other ghosts.
Listeners, thank you for joining us for this episode of the Goat American Novel. It's so nice to have you. I know sometimes plot is a twisted and convoluted thing. If you're still here, well, I'm glad you're here on this journey with us. I don't know if Gotina rubbing her nose along the bones or clanking that garage sale sign as an incantation will really help Ruby accomplish their shared goals, but I'm hoping it will. The Goat American Novel was written and performed by me, Hildy Festerling. Special thanks this past week to Johnny Bucher and Amanda Laughlin for giving me the rest and respite I needed to complete this episode through a somewhat difficult time. I had migraines this past, whole month actually, which makes it hard to be a sound artist, so I'm glad we made it through. This episode co-starred the magnificent voices of Caleb Alden and Gabrielle Alden. Listeners, are you out there listening with your siblings? Have you considered making art with your siblings? I highly recommend it. Thanks again, as always, to the musicians who made these episodes sound so sweet. The people of the Electric Unicorn Music Studios. Thanks again as well to the Free Sound community. The good men, women, and envies of the Free Sound community just recording little sounds like metal clanking on wood and uploading it to the internet. Gosh, what would we do without them? Listeners, we appreciate your patience and that this episode came out a little late, and the next one might be a little late too. I'm not sure. I'm trying to keep a good pace through this springtime. Well, I hope you all keep well. Please listen to this episode with a friend or a family member and recommend this podcast to a family that you know who might like to enjoy it. perhaps as they embark on a spring break road trip. All right, well, thank you for listening. See you next time.